Hey, welcome everybody. Thank you for coming tonight to the lecture. I'm just going to do very little more than thank you and say that I'm very happy to have Tonic here this semester as visiting critics. We'll have a more formal introduction in a second, but this is the second time, or is this the third time? Third time. They've come to do studios with us. Always, always they do incredible studios. We sometimes take trips down to North Carolina with them. This semester we're doing a really remarkable housing studio, and I'm anxious to see some of that work. But right now I just want to say I'm very happy they are here tonight and thrilled to see them lecture again. I'm going to introduce Professor Bingo Wu, who is going to give the more formal introduction. And thank you again, and give it to Bingo Wu. Yes. You can clap for her.
So hi everyone, thank you for coming. Thank you for joining us. So tonight is a great honor for me to introduce Katherine Hogan and Vincent Petrarca here. They're the D candidates, Sergeant Visiting Critic here this semester. And of course, as you know, they're the founders and principals of Tonic Design, a design studio and a construction company. So these two companies are separate, but they're intersecting together as an entity. And this is a design build firm. Tonic creates sensitive, modern, construction-led design solutions for all building types, including award-winning modern homes, commercial and cultural design and construction. So Katherine believes that good design can happen at any scale and any budget, and she is an advocate for design in her community. She has been invited to lecture at both schools of architecture and AIA events. The most recent one is the AIA National Convention in 2017. Katherine is an adjunct professor of practice at NC State College of Design, and now, of course, we are honored to have her here as a VC. So passionate about academia and her local community, Katherine frequently serves as a guest juror in different schools, and she participates on many committees that promote design awareness. She serves as a member of the Syracuse University School of Architecture Advisory Board, and she was appointed by Raleigh City Council to serve on the Appearance Commission. Katherine received her B.Arch here, so is our alumni, with a minor in Italian language. After graduation, she worked with Bill Bruder Architects in Phoenix, Arizona, and after that, she held a fellowship position with Brian Bell at Design Corps, a nonprofit architecture practice serving communities normally without access to architectural services. For Vincent, he believes that the influence of construction on design and design on construction is a fundamental premise that shapes the process of every project. Winnie's first independent project was a 1,700 square foot house that he designed and built. It won AIA NC and AISAR awards, and he was featured in the Duval and the cover of the book titled 25 Houses Under 1,500 Square Foot. Tony's hybrid model of professional practice furthers the flexibility to take on various roles as both architect and contractor. This blended perspective allows Tony to build and implement their own designs as well as the designs of other architects, with the highest emphasis on craft. Winnie is a professor of practice in Department of Architecture in College of Design at the NC State. And of course, now we have him here this semester as VC. He holds both a Bachelor of Architecture and MR2 degree from NC State. From 1993 to 2003, Winnie worked for the award-winning firm Frank Harmon Architects in Raleigh City. It was during this period that Winnie found many opportunities to fall into design-build projects. Working together, they flexibly take on the role of designer or general contractor, or both. So Tonic's knowledge of construction and design is a valuable editing device for the work they produce. It increased the scope of their influence on the final projects. As a methodology, Tonic embraced the influence of construction on design and design on construction. This becomes the fundamental approach that defines their work, which we will look into tonight. So let's welcome Katherine and Winnie.
yours to turn on. Okay, can you hear me? Yeah, great. Well, thank you all for having us again. It's really good to be back teaching and have another opportunity to lecture. We're having a lot of fun this semester. So some of you have probably seen not the same lecture, but a lecture before, or where you're in our studio. But we usually start out with kind of our values and how we work, our interests, our influences, and then our practice, our hybrid practice model of both design and construction. And then we'll show you some projects, some early projects, and then some new things that we're working on. So,
Yeah, okay.
Well, this is Vinny and his sister with a concrete mixer in the background. I grew up on 18th Street in New York City, so different ways of experiencing construction and architecture kind of defined us.
Yep.
After Syracuse, I went to work for Will Bruder in Phoenix. This is one house that I worked on while I was there doing some of the construction documents, but learned a lot from him about materials and craft and putting together things in a different and unexpected way. And I think we show this because we were talking today in the practice discussion about your first job after school, and it's not always where you will be, because I only worked with Will for probably a total of 2 years, but he came to do our review here. We visit architecture together, we work on committees together, and it's just beyond working in an office how that influences you later on.
Yeah, he's basically a maniac. Yeah, we were driving from here to Corning, and like he wanted to stop at every project. Then after he went to visit the project, he called the person on the phone. He's like, "Tommy Pfeiffer." He's like, "It's beautiful." Will, goodbye.
You can call somebody.
Tommy?
After that, and why I came to North Carolina was to work for Design Corps, which is a nonprofit office. It was a 1-year fellowship, and the intention was to serve those who don't have access to architects. So understanding the role of design and architecture in the farm worker community. And that was some of my first on-site experience of building. We were making a market structure.
I worked for a teacher and a practitioner, and one of our projects, it was a year, it was actually my first summer with him. He had this project in the Bahamas, and we started making models and going through the whole process. And in the Bahamas, it's really hard to find a contractor, especially on a small island, and so the owners hired my boss to help manage construction. And then basically they hired the laborers and subcontractors themselves. And so we went down to the island, and we basically fabricated the roof with people who really couldn't read the plans, and created this upside down kind of pyramid shape to collect fresh water, because you're surrounded by salt water. It was really interesting because it allowed me to kind of expand and jump into design build. It was probably really risky for my boss at the time, being a traditional architect, to legally do that.
So this is where we're based in Raleigh, North Carolina. And I think we're in a very sort of global world now, but as our practice has evolved, I think our choices and our process is very specific to our place. We have about 1 million people between Chapel Hill, Durham, and Raleigh, so it's growing rapidly. And I think what's really important to our place is art and culture and universities. So we've had there are a lot of people that value design, but we don't have very large budgets.
Most people know because of the games last night. We have the Tar Heels, the Blue Devils, and my Wolfpack. Other thing about the Triangle is that most of our work is all over the Triangle. So we could be 45 minutes on the highway to a house over here, and then we could probably be at a high school over here. And so our practice is located in a very suburban city, and it's car obviously oriented, and so we basically within an hour radius of Raleigh is our stuff. And in North Carolina, we have the rich clay soil, the hot summers, and this could be basically sometime in the late evening in the beginning of the summer. This could be Christmas time, February about this time, and we kind of go back and forth. So our envelope of our buildings and our overhangs and the materials we choose are really kind of a part of this mixed climate and how we react to that. Our office, like any office, we're trying to make it best architecture we can. We all kind of value everybody sitting at the table, what your experience level is, or who you are, whether you're a trade, a contractor, or a consultant. This is also our job site. I mean, obviously our job site, but this is our office. And so because we build our projects, we don't really see the distinction between inside and outside in our work environment.
So we've ranged in size in the past, and we've had a much larger crew with multiple project managers, but right now, even with this booming economy, we've chosen to be intentionally small. I think it allows us to focus on fewer projects, and we realize that if we have too many projects going on at once, it's hard to focus on the same quality. So we're trying out this smaller version of our practice.
Yeah, I think like any practice in anybody's career, you have different chapters, and in this current chapter, I'm enjoying our little kids more, and so they're 8 and 6 at different times. These are the interns in our office on the job site, so if you come with us in the summer, Scott Kravis will tell you that you're probably going to be on the job site doing design. We're very lucky that in our place in the Triangle, because of our architecture school, since the 50s, there's been many really good architects that have laid a real kind of quality building vocabulary for us. And so we're really building on what they've created, and we wouldn't be able probably to do it without them.
Mm-hmm. So quite often we'll take clients to existing job sites that are in process while we're talking about design that you would normally see in a design office, just so we can confirm details, talk about the conceptual idea, but then also talk about how it's made.
It's real important that when we make a model, and we were kind of talking about that in our studio, when we make a model, we're actually doing working drawings in our head and how materials go together. This drawing just represents like the many different conditions on the one particular project, and how we're going to kind of organize the diagram and refine our architectural idea. In the end, that's the project. It's just started construction. We're super excited because it's 4 years in the making. And as we talked about in our lunch discussion, that means our fee's been divided in 4 years.
And that was not because it took too long to design. It's just that some nature of projects, they're working on selling other properties and waiting for the right time. So we're excited this is starting.
And this is one of our superintendent that was an intern and now working at El Dorado Architects, where a lot of times you'll see us making the drawings and designing, but then they also go out in the field and construct and fabricate, and really kind of like that translation is where you really kind of learn about what to draw the next time. And so we make a lot of mock-ups and models. Talk to the trades, get them to buy in, and ironically, we wound up doing less drawings.
And so this is a model, and instead of drawing every window and siding detail. We were looking at taking an ordinary material and just putting it together in a different way, so 3 different sizes, and getting our typical roofing subcontractor. So you see the model, then the mock-up where everyone is enrolled and informed about making, and then the final image of the building that was constructed. So we think that the act of making is fundamental to our design approach.
So we've actually, over time, we wind up leaning heavily on the people that actually work each week and get paid on Friday. And they actually teach us a lot about architecture. This first model here is you see that stairs kind of like coming down and cascading. And we really didn't know how to draw it, we didn't know how to build it, but we showed the guy how to make the model, and he knew exactly how to form it and put it together. So it's amazing what you can learn from people who you think don't know much about architecture.
So we are, we always look at site and context, and this house in particular was the first modern lead home in North Carolina, and so the diagram of the house is based on solar panels and exposure, and so what was interesting about this project is not only did we fill up binders and binders worth of lead paperwork, we actually were on site implementing the system, so we could backfeed that knowledge into future projects about what worked and didn't work. And that's the project, same project.
This is kind of my safe place or not so safe place, depending on the time of the year. We see like architecture and construction, it's really a spreadsheet and several small piles of money to manage. And there's no like quick fix in a project. Most of our clients are using a bank. That means they've saved money for many years to put down a down payment, and the bank's not going to give us any more if they comp out and give them the loan. And so if we can't make every move in a project, but we can make a few, and we have to manage all the rest. Every project is different, and so the intensity jumps around the spreadsheet. But I really feel like it's here where we kind of manage small projects. Here's my dad collecting the receipts. He does the books. He doesn't even notice that the siding's a different color. We'll show you more of this, but we try to use different tools. We're kind of, in practice, you're slightly reactive. What the client brings to you is kind of what you focus on because you're to serve your client. And so sometimes our clients want to come and make something crazy. Sometimes they come and say, I want to use precast concrete. Sometimes you never know, but you have to turn it into architecture.
This is, another piece of, and we were also talking about this earlier, but this is the first house that Vinny built for himself. And what this slide talks about is the house on the left is sort of your typical house. It has all of the same data as the house that Vinny constructed, but it really talks about like rearranging that into architecture and using what the bank is going to want you to do, what the local comps and constraints are, and re-envisioning that in a new way.
I think also in the lunch discussion, everybody's like, well, you have construction experience, and I think like I did use some tools and I did have some experiences, but I would say like not until you get your own project and you're doing a project for yourself and your skin in the game do you really focus and learn about all the parameters that you need to know. And so I was encouraging everybody is like, try to give yourselves opportunities to learn. You don't have to, you're going to learn a lot more on the job site and doing things for yourself about the future. And that kind of relates to, after that house, we kind of developed these kind of quick diagrams. We can go on and on about these, but one is time is money, obviously. If you see a lecture by shop or you go to any job site nowadays, the contractor is basically trying to save time. And so that's why we feel in this design-build relationship, the blue diagram on the bottom left, we're kind of compressing time and trying to give the owners a price for the project as we design it, as opposed to traditional practice where you pay an architect to come up with a design, you like it, have a few meetings, pay them some more to do some more development work, and then you have a set of drawings, and then you get an estimate. So it's really, everything's about how do you get real numbers soon. Another one is the 98%. Sam Mockbee said like architects could become the house pets for the rich. And so in this here, by using bank loans, we're trying to kind of expand that 2% to something larger. And being the contractor on the far bottom right diagram, we're taking the design fee and putting it into the mortgage versus owners coming out of their pocket to pay the architect so that they can have more architecture. Again, the upper diagram is basically, that is real. We had receipts for $300,000 for a project. You can see our design fee and our construction fee. And basically, they're trying to get the whole property to comp out to be about $200 a square foot. So it's pretty tight.
And in a way, we're trying to make design more accessible, but create projects that probably would not happen because the same clients that may just not have the opportunity to put a down payment and hire an architect would just go and buy something that maybe wouldn't be ideal. So in some ways, it's kind of generating work.
So another thing that we've done since we've done this last time, we basically have bought a piece of land, and then we came up with a sketch design. You can kind of see a diagram and a floor plan for the site. And instead of waiting for the clients to come to us, we basically secured the loan for the lot and then put this out there, and lo and behold, we had 3 potential buyers. And so I think this is another way that architects need to find ways to get more of being the lead and change the business formula instead of just reacting to what our fee is going to be and lowering it. And it turned into this project here.
We're almost done trying to get a CO in the next few weeks.
Remember those models, Scott?
And so, as you know, this is our 3rd time teaching here. This is our first studio, but we just wanted to share some ways of working, like making and models in the studio, large-scale drawings to understand assembly and how things are made. That turned into some more formal reviews, but really understanding a building and precedent from that context.
I think a really big wall section is how the building touches the sky. I think it's really important. We also teach it, like Katherine said, at NC State. We're teaching structures and materials to 2nd year going on, taking them to many job sites as we can because we believe that experiencing and touching architecture and materials is how you really kind of build your vocabulary. There's our studio, last studio at NC State. And
so this was sort of a development project for us as well, but we found this building, the roof was falling in. We just show it because it was one of our first studios that we had built. And so it was all work at one time.
Mm-hmm. It was real looker. I think like one of the things you have as an architect is you have the ability to create drawings and organize construction, even if you don't do it. So the idea that we work for clients but then have side projects and moonlight for ourselves. So this is, 13 weeks?
Mm-hmm.
Well, basically a summer for 3 interns. Mm-hmm. And we went from that state to actually constructing our own office and an apartment in the back. And then we started to lose some of the office space. And so it became live work. And you could see the live is sort of really jumping in there. And then we got to this point, and so then we had to sell the building. And
we show this because you never know what will happen to your projects after with animals on the walls and
Yeah.
different paint colors. But we were able to sell it, and so it was allowed us to do another project.
Yeah. And so again on moonlighting, we're trying to kind of use our sweat, do something for ourselves, and then roll it into something again. This is our children. They're always on the job sites on the weekend. It's amazing how kids would draw architecture, and the same thing for older kids. And don't even ask. So this is kind of our method of practice, is basically working backwards. We found this, design build. There's a book. Basically, it says if you, as an architect, use a square foot calculation, there's a good chance you're going to be 35% off, and that's in the AIA. And so, really, the contractors, the ones who actually get prices from the subcontractors, the unit prices, that's when you're going to have the least amount of variation in your budget. So, if you want your project to be built, it has to be a balanced financial formula. And I think going back in time to like Brunelleschi being what we say is the last master builder versus Alberti only doing design, there was this kind of shift away from design build. People like Frank Lloyd Wright and some other schools around the country have always had a design build kind of program. If you look around the country, you'll find different firms at the smaller scales doing a lot of design build. And then if you look really closely, you'll see larger projects where, sort of our top tier architects are doing a design build process as well. It's kind of this forced marriage between the contractor and the architect. And again, it goes back to delivery method and finding out prices and time early on. So, and there's all different versions now of design build. It's called construction manager at risk. You basically, if our city just built a convention center, it was $70 million, I think, and they basically hired a contractor, hired an architect, and they said, like, here's your pile of money, don't go over budget, and then figure it out. And to me, that's design build. So again, trying to expand the practice diagram of the traditional practice to being something where there's lots of overlaps.
And so the darker shades of blue are where we, I think for us in our place, there's a lot of design potential when everyone's working together.
Yep. And another way of saying that too is that us as designers got to go out there and start building, and a lot of our builders have got to start designing. And again, this is our place. So this is we do a lot of single-family houses in these neighborhoods. We're lucky in our place. We have land prices fairly affordable, and so there are clients that can, buy a piece of land. In this particular place, we found a client that bought the steel frame structure, and then we saved a lot of the steel framing and reconfigured it. We always said that the house was strong in concept by the original, but it was in terrible shape.
So it was a steel structure that was built before that was supposed to be kind of flexible, and it was obviously falling apart, but it was a really fun exercise in reusing this steel frame and reinterpreting it.
And we in our group again, we said that it was real important that when you're ready to start your own practice, to start with a project. Be very intentional about the project you start with, because that's the laws of attraction, is that they're going to come to you. So what I mean by that is if you do like a house addition and you do this, the chances are that most people are going to know you for house additions or whatever that is. And I think you can be very strategic about how you position yourself and how you start. So we were lucky that the timing and everything happened where we got to start on a project that we'd be very happy with finishing our careers with.
This project is located in Hillsborough. This is the one we talk about budget quite often because it was a pretty tight budget, but we had great visionary clients who wanted to do something interesting. This is kind of a precedent image discussion with them that we always like to show. In this context of kind of rural North Carolina, you see a lot of old barns and rusted metal, and we wanted to take that and reinterpret it and give it a new meaning. And so we really, started with the top diagram, a typical house plan. How would a spec builder think? How would a typical builder think? And then we started to make adjustments that wouldn't increase the cost, but small cantilevers, shifting based on program, and then covering it in this metal enclosure that talked about shadow and depth. And so it wasn't just this flat, plain box.
And being the contractor, it's funny when you put out drawings to bid and they look a little different than what they're used to, the price just starts going up. But if you hire the trades directly and say like, hey, if I take the corner of the building that was 90 degrees and I just slide this pin and I promise you that you're not going to be in trouble if it's wrong and I'm taking the responsibility, they have no problem doing it and it costs just as cheap. And so I think there are kind of like lessons in coming out of the ground, framing the building, putting the skin is like if you work directly with the trades and you kind of like engage them in the process, you can get the architecture you want.
And for less
Affordable.
cost, because this is probably one of the least expensive roofers in our place that we've worked with for a long time, and we bought the material and we just asked him to fold it and come up with a panel system and put it on the building, but we worked directly with him, so it wasn't an expensive metal skin.
And then they started to get it. It's like, oh, you just want a rusted barn. So yeah, here's the skin.
And so that was a live work project. She has an art studio in the house. It's pretty compact footprint, and now their kids are getting ready to go off to college, so they've lived in it pretty well.
So now this is 60 acres in another county slightly south of us. It's kind of cool. You can see the power lines in the diagram there. This was for a musician and his son, right? Mm-hmm. Basically, he had X amount of dollars, and we had to kind of reappropriate them in the right places.
It was interesting because he came to us with a set of plans that he had done with an architect 12 years prior that was really looked like a Gothic cathedral. And then he had a stack of architecture magazines, and he said, I kind of want both. And obviously we weren't going to do the first option, but I think we tried to reinterpret this. He's pretty intense, he likes being on stage, and so it was about being really tall and pushing the limits of construction. So you've seen this diagram.
Yeah, and in our studio we've been saying try to find that architectural idea. And sometimes even after the project's photographed, we're trying to figure out what was the idea. So it's not easy stuff, but all throughout the process of your working, you have to kind of think both ways, how I move forward and clarify it. Here's the archer loops.
And I think what was the diagram of the house here with the siding material, it was set up in an interesting way, and we did a lot of studies on the facade, but really the upper metal band, we really pushed for that because that was a harder place to maintain, to get up there on the ladder and paint. So we used a pretty common metal and came up with that facade, and then the bottom was an easier kind of cement panel.
And like Katherine said, he does like to perform, obviously, and in that middle space there, it's amazing what we actually run. It's like an MC Escher kind of thing with steel. And so there are all these walkways and transparencies of the floor surface as you go through the house and go between father and son.
But this one also, we had a 30-foot tall living room space. We needed to do this stair that he was really excited about, and we bid it out, and it came in I think at maybe $70,000. And so what we had to do was just make it with people in our office, and so we had to think about putting steel together in a specific way and fabricating it ourselves to make it happen. Otherwise, it would have gone away.
Yep. So over time, our firm has started to kind of like change our roles and be very strategic about the things we actually build versus what we subcontract. We'll go real fast through this one because I think a lot of people have seen it. It's our museum project at our North Carolina Museum of Art, and it was this great opportunity to create an outdoor classroom. I'm showing this because the whole office fell in love with this kind of like dragonfly structure. We figured out how we're going to make it because we actually created a pathway that was the same geometry as the wing, so that we can have a job site table and we wouldn't have to transport it, and like everything was perfect about it. And then that guy Tom Viper actually came back. He did the actual expansion of our museum, and they changed the location of this pavilion to something very high in a different location that had a road around it. So whereas we were kind of like in the middle of against a creek, they said like, can't you just bring the dragonfly up the hill? And we were like, no, you can't do that. And so like the lesson here is that as designers, you can't really fall in love with your scheme. You have to fall in love with many of your schemes. And so laterally thinking and knowing that you're going to come up with something good and the next time. The project we actually wound up building was this kind of like tall wall, and how you break the scale down with how it was made, how you would shear metal in thirds and halves, and then still create those ideas of transparency. So again, we had a summer project of interns, and that's the way it came in. The interns, they did so well that summer. It was kind of like that Raiders of the Lost Ark moment where, Indiana Jones finds the map room, but everybody else is kind of scouring the 10 acres of the earth looking for treasure. Our team constructed and fabricated it, and then we submitted it we got a national AIA award for it. And again, 3 interns, didn't have much construction experience, kind of took it to the top. Catherine, did you write that for me?
No. But it's really amazing to see your project when it's used in different ways, and when preschool classrooms can visit. So this is another public project that we did. You can see downtown Raleigh in the background. It's not very big. This is located just north. And we worked on this project probably about 8 years ago.
We got another looker.
This is how we found it. The first owners couldn't sit inside the building without it being 85 degrees because it was single pane glass and an old facade. It was built as a dry cleaner, so the clothes would revolve around the top. You could watch them, and you drive underneath and pick up your clothes. There was a fur locker in the back. And so the first round was just figuring out how to make this building more energy efficient. And we were the architect and the contractor on this project, so it wasn't a big budget, but we came up with this idea of kind of putting this sunshade and hat and replacing the glass. And finally, this is, then we had the second round of clients who wanted to turn it into a furniture store. And so that they invested a little bit more money, but we added this stair and elevator to the side and a roof deck. And so that's the top. They use it for events and parties, even though it's permitted for selling outdoor furniture. And I think what's really interesting is that the architecture of the building was pretty much generated by how much parking we could add to the site. So that roof terrace that you just saw was sized specifically so that it would allow us to get a permit for the project. And so
I'm gonna shift platforms
You
here.
keep jumping around. So this is in Durham, in a cul-de-sac. What?
That's what you
Well, yeah, let's just show this site, I guess. And so this was a leftover lot that our clients found. Everything else was built up in the neighborhood. It was a corner lot, so they wanted to be very protective on the outside and then really open up to the landscape of the site. And so this is about starting with a box, opening it up, where you come in for the entry, how you park in a building and what that does to the architecture, and then opening up to this site. And we wrapped it in a Core 10 skin. So we have a video.
I got a video here to wake you guys up. Sorry. Okay. It's going to be loud probably. I'll lower it, I promise.
Explaining like why, explaining the position. I'm obsessed with the position, like where this stuff is coming from. Like songs are I like when songs are from a place, not about something, from a place, from a moment.
All right. Thank you, Scott Kravitz, for that video.
We show that just to, I think it's explanation of kind of the whole design build process, bringing models to the site, bringing site information into the office.
Uh-oh.
There's something.
Here. I don't know what that was. Okay, there's more going on. It's playing. Okay.
So here's and this also will kind of rust over time and turn to a really dark brown and blend into the forest.
Gotta get over here. Okay. So we wanted to show this next project because if you think about your belly button, this is an outie. This one here is an innie. In Core 10. So this was a house addition to an older house in a pretty established neighborhood. So we had really tight restraints where we couldn't go outside the perimeter of the front.
The original house was built in 1914, and they were trying to get tax credits, so we couldn't expand past the perimeter of the existing house. But they have a real love for kind of traditional architecture, objects, and art, but then also they were a recently married young couple and kind of wanted to present themselves with their new design values.
And so you can see here on the left, or on your left, you know, the old house is a series of rooms, and they wanted one large space to kind of really, you know, use this house the way they wanted to. And so the concept was sort of this slice between and kind of have this transition.
And so the interstitial space between old and new, I think, became one of the more exciting parts of the project, because this is a type of space that we wouldn't have come up with without working with an existing condition. And it was about sliding under the old roof of the house and building a new piece that was an addition, getting it all to work together. But then we created this tall vertical slot in between where you transition from old to new.
Yep.
And so this is
also interesting because this is a project, we say design build a lot, but actually we just did the drawings for this one, and somebody else built it. But that they couldn't really figure out what we wanted to do with the siding, and so we actually self-performed the siding. So now we're Tonic siding contractors. So like some of our projects now are morphing into like someone else is building them, and then we build particular pieces where we see the most value and not losing things in translation.
because it was a traditional family contractor that had not done anything in Core 10 or in the sort of detailing that we were hoping for. So I think if we hadn't taken on this piece, it probably wouldn't have happened.
So we basically, like I said, this isn't any. Nick and Morgan created this kind of facade of Core 10. We knew we had sheet metal, so we were working in 8-foot increments, trying to get things to line up with the windows. And then we were working with Ron, our roofer, to fabricate these panels. And so we're figuring out, how to a third or a half or, different variations of that. And so we're lucky because, when we take it on, we create these mock-ups of how things go together. We're trying to get Ignacio and everybody to kind of buy into the detailing so that in the end, it comes together the way we intended to. We also were able to make different mock-ups on this one. There's this kind of west facade, and so we have these vertical shading devices, and so we kind of came up with this pattern after a while of coming up with different studies. It came out like that. And so you can see there's this reveal every so often in the pattern of what Nick and Morgan came up with. So we were really excited about that. So we really, again, that guy Ron Gibson, the sheet metal guy, he's kind of our kind of go-to. He doesn't know what we're going to come up with, but we get to work it out together.
And so we'll just show you a few quick images from new work. We've been lucky to get some more institutional and educational jobs, so we're working on a makerspace, which we'll show you. And this is really exciting for us because of, like the pavilion at the Art Museum, there's more public engagement with our projects. And so this one in particular is about long-term projects, a makerspace where the students don't have to shift their classroom and they can leave things for a while and come back to them, kind of like in design school. More of the concept of a one-room schoolhouse. And this preschool and elementary school had acquired a new piece of land, and we're looking to expand their campus.
So basically, our first part of the project was to do a master plan on how to expand the road and how to phase construction for this building, where all the kids will come at different times for a couple days and make something that they don't have to put away. This is, I think this is really to Catherine's credit because we're getting to do more public things like you said, but like a school project, it wound up becoming the basis for more projects, so it's an exciting time.
I think that the teachers initially came to us and said we want all these spaces, and then it just started becoming this one big flexible room. So we had to think about how we would make that, the structure, and how to kind of divide the space but allow for interaction between different students.
The roof is basically, they want to use it as a tool, so the long slope was collecting as much water as possible to a rain garden. They're going to use different sort of like strategies so that they can teach the children what is possible as far as sustainability. It's not going to be a sustainable project on its own, but it's going to be an example of different
Right.
pieces.
So learning from the building itself. And then they want to make movies, they want to have microscopes, and so we were just trying to figure out the program for the space, but how also this relates to the rest of the campus and becomes a really important gathering space. This school is all about indoor and outdoor learning, so it was just as important for us to make an outdoor collaborative space as an interior one. And I think
And one project feeds to the next project. So we basically, after doing a project for a school, Katherine got us on a miscellaneous service agreement with our school system, Wake County Public School System, and somehow they had this great project that they wanted to. They have this this is a pretty big high school, and this is the main lobby of their high school, and it's super dark. And there's trophy cases because this particular school wins almost every state championship, depending, whatever sport it is. So the trophies go on forever. And so the principal really wanted the school, when you come in here, not to be known for sports, but to be known that this is the stepping stone to college. And so what they asked us to do is kind of re-envision the lobby. And so we're kind of coming up with social spaces, changing the colors, trying to accentuate that big stair, and for a very low budget, like $100,000. And I think we're going to be able to do it this summer. We're working on the drawings now. And then what was interesting about this project is that we probably shouldn't have taken it on, but this is our first chance to do a project like this. We took this on for a small fee, and then they liked us. And then they wound up giving us a $6 million, 22,000 square foot kindergarten facility. So you never really know what's going to happen in your path, but as things kind of go. But the last piece of our lecture here, because I know we're getting late, we have other people build. You can't really figure us out at this point. So now this is going to be like we build for others. And so this is for a project. This is a house. It's about 40 tanks weight of concrete. It's cast in place. It's a one-story house. It's got tons of steel for Kenneth Hopgood architect. He's a real classic modernist in our area. We were so happy to kind of be part of that. Building for other architects, I'm sorry to say, is our most profitable part of our business.
and it's also like working in their office for a particular period of time. You see their drawings, you see how they work, and our intention is beyond making fee is that we help them realize their vision. We won't take on any construction project for the sake of building, but it really. And so we want to help them realize their vision.
Got it. Thank you. Okay. There's another project for another architect that wanted to do a bus shelter. And then this is for next week's lecture, Larry Scarpa. He is coming. We're doing a house with him in Hillsborough, North Carolina. We started out with this project where...
it was an addition to an existing house.
Yep.
And so he had all these models. They were ready to go, but they couldn't find a contractor. And luckily we were connected with Larry again on this project, and we kind of priced it out and said you probably will end up spending about the same if you just build a whole new house, because the existing house was rotting and they were trying to do a lot to it that was changing it from what it was.
These are friends of his that moved from LA to North Carolina, and so you see Steve, he's like what's that?
It's still fine. It's just
What? I'm not sure what you mean. Just stop that there.
Just X out.
Got it. Don't want wild horses. Okay. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, so Steve, Larry's first national AIA award was for a film studio for Steve in LA, and now Steve's moved to North Carolina, so I asked Larry to do a house edition. Like Catherine said, we wound up turning it into a whole new house, and then Larry really got to go crazy, and it's been a really rewarding, because I think Larry's the nicest architect I've ever met, and I mean that in a real genuine way. He's thoughtful, kind, creative, he's fair, but this project here, Larry, you can see, I want you to see like the edge of, how thick the edge of these frames are, right?
Just remember.
Just remember that, because as Larry drew it, he's like, this is going to be the greatest house I ever did. And like he drew it this way. And then we got to this place where after printing models and giving him the contractors and trying to understand what's going on, there's not many 90 degrees in the angles in this house, and we're okay with that. But we did pour the foundations, and Larry made his first job site visit, and then he changed everything. And so it's basically 2 pavilions that look to this meadow connected by a flat roof.
And so this is where we look at what happened to that roof, wall and roof edge. It became a thin steel plate. So we had to work through that foundation detail, and I think we just tell this story because we didn't act like a typical contractor and say, oh, you can't do that, or we're going to add so much money to the project.
No, we enabled them.
Yeah, pretty much. And so we decided we wanted to all figure it out together, and I think it just that those small details really have a big impact, and I think that's really kind of the benefit of design build, even though this is a slightly different approach to it.
So sometimes he's in China, sometimes you never know where Larry, he's always on an airplane, but you can see now where you have the edges of the building and the glass goes right to the edge, where we used to have this 1 foot thick kind of frame. Going back and forth, asking him questions, learning, I feel like, we're part of his office at this point. Constantly trying to refine, constantly trying to get it to be where he wants it. There are things that we would do that he does differently, and we always ask 3 questions before we move forward. This is kind of where the house kind of stands. You can see the leaves are down. We're putting the skin on the building. It's black corrugated metal. And this project is going to cost pretty much similar to like our other projects. I want to show you this video from Steve, and we have a few. Let's see here.
I don't think we can make it any bigger.
Oh.
But.
That's steeplechase, and we're pretty much on our last slide. Oh gosh, it went always to the beginning. We wanted to get our next
So that one
crew.
should be finished probably at the end of the summer.
Yep.
And we're moving on to interior work and finishes. This is our crew this semester.
We're so excited. They're doing a great job. It's great to be in Syracuse again, so thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you so much for the wonderful lecture. So now we open up for a Q&A. Anyone questions?
Yeah. Oh, I need that.
I was wondering how long a typical project would take, and like, I'm assuming you guys are like with the project 100% of the way, like from day one to like the last day?
Well, we're in a place where, in our firm, you're looking at 2 full-time employees, and then we have a few people that help us. So we have Scott helps us from time to time, and then Gabby and other people. So we're trying to do a few things really well, and so we really are part of every project. So we meet with the clients on the job sites or at their school, and so we really haven't kind of expanded. We're kind of very small now. So it'll take about 3 months to 6 months to design like a house, and about 12 months to build a house. And we can go up or down from that. That Larry Scarpa house is going on year 2, just so you know. Does that answer your question? Yes?
More questions?
Yeah, see.
Who runs your Instagram account?
Catherine.
I keep seeing like a lot of new things and then posts from other older clients that are there.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought I was following the Larry Scarpa project, and I thought you guys had designed that as well. But I guess you're integral to the design.
Yeah,
process as well.
we're like the local architect. I mean, we help get the permit, and I'd say we're in the same spirit of making it a good project, but we're the ones building it. It's his design. And then, but some of the older projects you'll see, we try and go back and visit and see clients, or if they post something about their project. So.
We've gotten to the point now we have, especially our first client goes to every one of our projects because they just are so passionate about architecture. And a lot of our clients don't like a lot of our clients' work.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of a tough thing at a Christmas party. But like, John and Molly, the steel frame house, went to the Rockstar house and they're like, why? Why would you do that? It's like, well, that's what the client wanted.
Well, they have an elevator in their house, and they're at that stage. They don't want to walk up 4 flights of stairs. But so it is very. I think that we try and be, we try and react to the site and the client and the budget and materials, and so we hope that there's a consistent DNA, but that no project is exactly the same, so that it kind of evolves as we work on new things.
Yes.
Do you ever have a challenge communicating or persuading a client into something more adventurous? I mean, it seems like maybe it's a different market, but that seems to be a constant challenge. I know with a lot of architects, they want to do something kind of interesting or more abstract. They show it to their sister-in-law at Thanksgiving, and they come back and say sorry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we're always kind of going back and forth, but I think like that early comment about like we were lucky to have the first client we had, and then like if you go to our website, you're going to filter us out pretty quick, whether you know what you're getting into.
Yeah.
And so like now we've gotten to this place where like clients, they know what they're kind of getting into.
I think we also do that feasibility study, that's that compressed design fee, because sometimes our design fee is in the construction loan, and during that time you get to learn a lot about each other. And so we've done those, and maybe it's really not their vision, or one person in the relationship doesn't agree with the other person, and it's just not the right time or the right project. So I think that's a really good learning period. But yeah, usually you kind of, sometimes there are things that you wish you could have done differently, but you're all hopefully on the same page involved in the final product.
Part of our, our business approach is that we'll do a pretty extensive feasibility study, meet many times with the client for a very low amount of dollars, just because there's a huge value in going down the road with somebody after the dollars are going back and forth and then having a problem. And so really kind of vetting it both for them and for us. Because again, we're only doing maybe like 3 projects, 5 projects a year. It's really valuable, the time to make sure that's a good client.
All right, more questions?
It's dinner time.